On today's episode of Locked On Wild, it certainly looks like Liam Ohgren is going to make the most of his opportunity with potential surgery looming for Mats Zuccarello.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we will take a look at some observations from training camp as things officially got underway this weekend. Wild had their first preseason game of the preseason. So we'll take a look at a big game for Yakov Trenin. We'll also talk about news for Mats Zuccarello as he waits to see if he's going to need surgery to start the season and what that can mean for Liam Ohgren. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, credentialed media member for the 2025-2026 season, host of Seth on Sports. And we're joined today by Alex Micheletti once again. And it is a Victory Micheletti Monday because Minnesota Wild pulled off an overtime winner against the Winnipeg Jets, a game that they trailed 2-0 within the first 5-6 minutes of the game. And Yakov Trenin just chipped away. Hunter Haight with a goal as well. And next thing you know, the Wild pick up an overtime win, which really excited the Minnesota Wild social media account. And hey, hockey's back, so why not get excited? But we are getting close, Alex, to the start of the season, which means injuries. Now we heard last week that, quote, something has come up recently with Mats Zuccarello that is going to lead to him potentially missing time. Well, that looks like a certainty now because the report was that Zuccarello has an appointment today to see whether or not he's going to need surgery for whatever the ailment is. We'll never know what the ailment is. The NHL doesn't discuss, and they don't really care if teams are like, we're not discussing injuries. So we'll never know what happened, but evidently something happened.
And for him to have to travel to go get an opinion, this has to be, you would think, a second opinion, because why couldn't the Wild doctor, diagnose what ailment he's having? So that, either way, if you're traveling, it does not sound good. It doesn't sound like he's going to be back anytime soon. It seems like they're just going to say, yes, Mats, you have to have the surgery, because if he's traveling to even just go over it, it doesn't sound too promising.
And can I just put my detective hat on here for a second? Why is this becoming such a prominent thing? When Kirill had his surgery, it was done by a different doctor. He had opinions from different doctors. It seems like this is becoming all too frequent of an occurrence that Minnesota Wild players are going elsewhere for medical procedures as opposed to going to the team medical staff. And I don't know the ins and outs. I'm assuming, I know it happens, but it feels like it's happening quite frequently with Minnesota Wild players here lately.
Yeah, it seems like there's some type of disagreement, and I know the Wild staff, that doctor staff, has been under fire because they were the doctors that were treating the U.S. team at the Four Nations last year, and there was all sorts of controversy with Charlie McAvoy having issues and being out for the season after the injury that he had. And him getting an infection in his shoulder, and it led to all sorts of just a mess, and people blamed it on the Wild, doctor staff. So that's kind of interesting. I know these 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 decisions are there's a lot that goes into it. I'm sure with not only just Matt's but his agent and who they think can do the best job. Yeah, it's a mess. But anytime you go under the knife, you just never know how they're going to be after they get out and recover from it.
Yeah. So no idea on the timetable, but I can pretty much guarantee that Zuccarello will just be day to day until he comes back, and that'll be the extent.
There'll be no comment. Yeah, there'll be no timetable. We don't even know about Brodin. They refuse to say anything about Brodin, and that's even a bigger deal than Zuccarello. And there's just no mention of how it happened. Did he have surgery? Because we don't even know that. And so, what's the deal? The season's here in less than a month now.
Yeah, I just don't really know how to feel about the Brodin situation, because on one hand, he is skating with the team, but it's in a no contact capacity. So that's at least encouraging. But if we already know, like, he's going to miss, quote, the start of the season, unquote. Again, the
fact he can't be touched at all, he can't be no contact. That's not great. That's fine that he can skate, but if you can't touch him, hockey's a contact sport. You need to be able to get hit. That's I'm sure something he's nervous about as well, and so he's such an important part of what this team does. The back end is the strength of the team, and to not have him at the start is it's frustrating.
And I would say between the two, like, which is going to be the bigger loss early on, it's Brodin, because you have on the offensive side, you have mostly the same pieces that you had last year. So I feel like the offense knows, okay, here are the guys that are going to kind of step in to fill that void. On defense, you've got young pieces that you are going to be incorporating in, and therefore having Brodin to be able to kind of be part of that leadership group would be pretty nice to be able to put him in with the likes of Zeev Boyum, David Juracek, even Carson Lambos too. They're all angling for spots, and I think this is why, again, on a PTO, this is part of the reason that a guy like Jack Johnson was brought in.
It's right up Bill Guerin's alley, right? It's somebody that has been in the league. It's somebody that he thinks that can, be trusted to not turn over the puck. Wild fans always cringed when John Merrill would be on the ice, because you just were expecting just a back-breaking turnover to happen at some point. We saw it in the Vegas series. I know he had a better year last year, but you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it happened in the worst time in that playoff series. But he looks like Jack Johnson has won a Stanley Cup and played for so long. If he has to play, it almost seems like they would trust him more than a Juracek or a Lambos at this point.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. I'm not going to, again, just for my own mental sanity, I'm not going to react adversely until it actually happens.
Right. He's still on that PTO. It doesn't mean anything. I think people see PTO and they just assume that that person's going to eventually sign an actual contract.
Yeah, and it's different. It is a different situation than having a guy like Cal Peterson on the roster, because like if Cal Peterson doesn't get the backup job at the NHL level, he's probably going to Iowa, or he may just even be the third goalie. Like he may just be on the NHL team and play like never. And if there's an injury, then he just slides in.
We'll never forget last year when they said, Jesper, go get that apartment in Minneapolis. And then that completely backfired. That was one we won't forget.
Yeah, that was a disaster. There have been no shortage of foot in mouth incidents with this organization, and I just was
Christmas in July.
Yeah. Well, Christmas in July is going to become public enemy number one, depending on how the ongoing saga plays out, that we're not going to get into, because again, nothing new to report. And so anytime there's nothing new to report, we're just going to move on to the next thing, because this is actually something that I think Wild fans should get excited about. Liam Ohgren has looked great so far. So he is in an intriguing line combination, but he's getting an elevated role because of Mats Zuccarello's absence. So we'll talk about Ohgren, his line mates, and whether or not that second line can work. That's all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is just for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes and see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. My subscription list per month, not going to lie, when I saw the number, jarring. But thanks to Monarch Money, I was able to weed through and get rid of a couple. I saved most of them, but I at least was saving some money in my pocket. Again, thanks to Monarch. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Going with the two-a-days approach once again this week. Plenty to discuss here as training camp has officially gotten underway. Preseason has gotten underway. So there is plenty to talk about, plenty of roster battles to take a peek at. So we're hitting you with two-a-days all week long. Double doses of episodes for you here on Locked On Wild. So happy listening. And again, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new episodes all week long. So, Alex, as I mentioned before the break, with Mats Zuccarello out of the lineup for some amount of time, that presents an opportunity. And that opportunity, it seems like, has been seized by Liam Ohgren, who, by all accounts, has looked great so far. Now, full dose of salt, full grain of salt, we are early in the process. We are a couple of days into training camp. First preseason game has taken place. I think we'll get a little better indication as preseason goes along as to if this has staying power, but by all accounts, Liam Ohgren looks great. He is fitting right in. He has stood out noticeably so far through camp, and he's been getting mixed in with Joel Eriksson Ek and Vladimir Tarasenko on the second line. Tarasenko as well, jumping off the page as far as the scrimmages go. Again, full grain of salt, but having a guy like Tarasenko come in and really just put the work in is encouraging. But also having Liam Ohgren, who put in all the time this offseason to get himself in position for an elevated spot, stepping up and taking said spot, that's encouraging too.
I was, when you were mentioning Ohgren, and I just think for both him and Tarasenko, it's a really unique situation because you have a guy in Tarasenko who's entering the last year of his contract, and he's kind of at a fork in the road where is he going to be able to get another contract in the NHL? A lot of people are saying, hey, this guy is washed up. He should go back to Russia. And then you have a guy like Ohgren who now is 21 and is finally maybe getting a shot at a full-time NHL spot. And he couldn't have a better situation with the Zuccarello injury and getting a chance at elevated minutes. So it's really, interesting that they're both kind of in that situation where they're out to prove something, even though Tarasenko has won Stanley Cups and scored so many goals, especially against the Wild. And so they're both in a really, really interesting spot, and both with chips on their shoulders. And we do have to take it with a grain of salt because preseason means nothing. Remember, at one point, Marco Rossi led the preseason, the NHL in points, and then didn't really play after that in the regular season when that happened. So, but it's encouraging. It's it's better than hearing the complete opposites for both of them. And we'll see if they can ride that momentum into the regular season when it's for real. And I really can't wait for, especially it always, they have Columbus again. So it's again, against Steen. So that's always, adds to the story. And they play St. Louis fairly quick too. And that will be really emotional for a guy like Tarasenko and Ohgren to see, just a division opponent too, and the spotlight's going to be on both of those guys for sure.
A divisional opponent that I still can't figure out. Like
yeah,
I've combed over the data, I still cannot figure out the St. Louis Blues.
They're extremely weird, and we still don't know if they want Jordan Kyrou full time. He seems to be an add to the list of guys that always plays well against the Wild. He's always been rumored to go to Montreal, but nothing's happened there. And obviously Jordan Binnington will always have it out for the Wild. So we'll see if he continues to have any issues with the Wild.
Well, and it seems too like I might be reading a little bit too much into this situation. It feels like Ohgren and Tarasenko both are competing for that second line spot long term. It's going to be, with Zuccarello out of the lineup, it's going to be Tarasenko's spot for now. But if he does not perform well, he could very easily get bumped lower in the lineup. And then if Liam Ohgren does, then you just keep him in that spot. You get the continuity with Joel Eriksson Ek, and you kind of ride with that and see how things go. If Tarasenko does perform well, like if he gets off to a real hot start, then you could be looking at Liam Ohgren maybe getting a spot on the third line. The bottom six is still kind of a work in progress. It looks as though we're going to get Kirill, Rossi, and Boldy to start the year, which I'm very much in favor of.
Yeah, of course.
But it looks like, long term here, Tarasenko and Ohgren are probably fighting for that second line wing spot long term, which, hey.
And who wouldn't want to play with Ek?
Yeah.
Because Ek is just such a solid player. He's somebody that is so dependable, and if they're not willing to go in the corner, he's your 200-foot player that will mask a lot of mistakes too, especially for a young guy like Ohgren, and he can just focus on his shot, which has been getting praise from Bill Guerin. And so that's a huge plus in his book, when even the GM is saying how well the shot looks. So
yeah.
Yeah, that's huge for a guy like Ohgren and a confidence boost.
Then again, we buried the lead because if Yakov Trenin's going to score 2 goals every game, then he should be on the second line. We're in an interesting spot with that too, because it looks as though, everybody's hoping for a redemption year for Trenin after his year last year. That's the at least the start of the social media campaign.
And he lost a bunch of weight. Well, why didn't he do that when he signed the contract? If that was such an issue, you'd think he would have been in better shape signing that deal. But now, after struggling, that's what was the excuses, is he was too heavy. That was interesting to hear that.
We are so back.
Is he going to be the new Marcus Johansson? Or that's going to be interesting. If is Marcus Johansson going to be the 13th forward, or is you're off? We are so back. We thought it was all just, is he going to be a top 6 guy? But now we have to worry, is he going to steal a spot from someone?
Will he even make the roster? Of course, I'm somewhat speaking in jest, but...
yes, of course, yes.
I mean, these are the things that get ironed out, and Billy, again, was pretty adamant of if he simply takes care of his business, he's going to be just fine.
Right.
Is what Guerin said. So take that about as far as you can throw it. But there is another, we'll talk a little bit about the game yesterday, but there is an interesting injury note that has been making the rounds and led to, honestly, one of the most preposterous things I've ever heard in my life. So we'll talk about Zeev Boyum, who's been out of the lineup for a little bit. A take on the Zeev Boyum situation. We'll discuss that when we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. For instance, if you had the Minnesota Vikings covering against the Cincinnati Bengals, if you had the Minnesota Vikings taking care of the over by themselves, if you had them scoring multiple defensive touchdowns, you went home a winner this weekend, courtesy of FanDuel, and the party's just getting started. The Vikings will be across the pond for the next couple of weeks, so make sure to set your fantasy lineups early if you have Carson Wentz as your quarterback, which you should. Either way, if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Again, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. The subs have been on a nice little run upward here as we get closer to the start of the season, which is exciting. You know, we're getting close to hockey season. Everybody's coming back after taking the off season off, and I don't blame you in that regard, because you know it gets quiet, but we're just glad to have everybody back and gearing up for the season. Let's talk a little bit first. Zeev Boyum has been injured throughout camp, Alex, and it led to some comments from John Hines about, you know, we just got to get him ramped up and back into the lineup when he's ready. There's no need to rush anybody back at this point. Like, he will be back in the lineup when he is ready to go, and anything other than that is just begging for re-aggravation or a longer injury that leads to him missing regular season games.
He's so important to this team. We have to have him ready to go on opening night. He's going to be the one that's going to relieve some pressure off Brock Faber. Brock won't have to, you know, it sounds like they don't even want him on the power play. They want Zeev and maybe Jared Spurgeon on PP2, so it can have Brock focus on the penalty kill, which, as we know, has always been an issue for the Wild, especially the past, you know, going on decade. So he needs to be ready to go. And if he is missing preseason, that's okay. If he's ready to go on opening night, that's all that matters.
Yeah. And so the suggestion that he would be intentionally holding himself out of the lineup, I heard that on another show, and laughable. Like,
you're on your entry level deal. You're not holding out on your entry level deal.
Yeah, I don't understand the assertion that Zeev is intentionally sitting out of
crazy take.
Sitting out of preseason games, and honestly, I think that is kind of dangerous rhetoric.
Yes.
To be just throwing out there without anything to back it up on.
He's injured. He's not holding out. He's injured. Yeah. He wants to be on the ice. They're probably holding him back. Yeah, that's absurd.
Yeah. Almost as absurd. I'm kidding. I wasn't going to go there. I was going to say almost as absurd as 2 Yakov Trenin goals. Honestly, if he ends up having a solid, like a good year, there will be no one cheering harder than me. Well, other than probably Jesse Pierce. Not exactly a fan of his last year, but to be fair, there were few that were in the States. Some of the observations that I had from the game yesterday is it was a very sloppy preseason game, as you'd expect. Both teams just getting their legs underneath them. That being said, I thought Jasper had some nice moments throughout the course of the game. I know the Jets scored 2 goals very early on in that game, but you know, Hunter Haight with a power play goal, Danil Yurov drawing a penalty amongst many other plays. It was nice to see some of those young guys in. That being said, on the Trenin front, even though he had the multiple goals, I think he was called for multiple penalties too. So a little equal opportunity in that regard. But this is the same as any other sports preseason. Is right away you start very basic, and we'll see more players incorporated as we go. The lineup was pretty bare bones. I mean,
Connor Hellebuck was not in that.
No,
for Winnipeg.
No, and as far as the regulars go, you had Yurov and Trenin Those are the only regular forwards in the lineup. Zach Bogosian played. David Juracek played on defense. We did see Carson Lambos as well. David Spacek played. So those guys got, a good amount of run, but you're not going to see the regular guys until far later in preseason. This is just a good opportunity for the depth to get some time and to get themselves acclimated to some NHL minutes should the need arise, which, if we know anything about the Minnesota Wild, it will.
Yeah, and Hunter Haight's, he had a really good first season in Iowa, and is trying to ride the momentum and show, hey, I can be an option. If the fourth line is struggling or injury, and he doesn't want to get lost in the mix, right? There's a lot of guys right in his kind of spot. You look at Riley Haight too, and some of these guys that are tweeners, or you feel for Carson Lambos because he's a first round pick, and I'm sure he sees his peers that were drafted right around them have played in the NHL, and he hasn't really established himself to the next level. It's hard when you have you're log jammed at the position that the Wild have the most depth in, and so you just have to keep stacking good opportunities, good film for the big staff to watch. And if they do get stuck in Iowa again, that team has a new coach, and they have to get used to the new system with Greg Cronin, and that's going to be very interesting to watch, to see how they develop to a new staff down there, and see if it can elevate some games where they were struggling, especially on the back end down there.
Yeah, I am intrigued to see what Cronin will bring to the table, because I think he is so much more qualified as far as getting players to the NHL level than Brett McLean was. He knows. He's been doing it forever. So he
look at
is
Anaheim.
Anaheim,
the points they went way up.
Yeah, they did a great job of getting young players to the league. Colorado, when he was with the Eagles, they got a ton of players to the NHL level because they had to fill a ton of those bottom 6 spots. So he is going to have a plan as to how to get those defensemen ready. Because as far as the injury stuff goes, defense is where it's going to be needed the most, because that's where the most injury concerns are. So if Lambos is ready, Juracek, we're going to see those guys this year.
No doubt about it. And they're going to be, it's the theme in the NHL is you need your young players to contribute right away, because they're on those cheap entry level contracts, and the Wild didn't spend all the money that they could have, and so they are throwing trust in these guys to contribute right away. And if they don't, that's why they have Brett Leeson. I don't think Jack Johnson would want to go to Iowa, but
no,
I'm sure they would find some other veterans that would be willing to go to Iowa, and they'd be called upon right away. Look at Tyler Pitlick. He signed here for a reason too, because he's seen this the Wild team from afar, the injury problems that they've had, and is a veteran that's willing to go to Iowa and help the young guys, but say, hey, I've played in the NHL for a lot of teams. I can be relied upon if I need to be called up.
Yeah, the depth will be key this year, but that is what we have for you here for today. So appreciate everybody tuning in as always. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. The season is getting closer and closer, and Locked On Wild keeps you covered.
Yeah, thanks for everybody from listening all over the world. When we get the comment sections, when I see all the Russian and translating, it amazes me that we have people again from Russia, from all of the world watching us, and this is why we love to do it. And the hockey season is here. We have college hockey getting going, and soon enough high school. So it's the best time of the year for sure.
Best time of the year indeed. Again, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got you covered every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day.